33 things that surprise first-time visitors to Japan. I'm Chris. This is Yellow Productions. I do travel guides that are fun, informative, and entertaining. And this video, it's a live stream. I'm doing this live. I'm looking forward to hanging out with all of you fellow explorers for the next hour. If you're watching the archive, we'll make sure to subscribe, click the bell to turn on notifications so you get notified of these live streams that I typically do on Monday nights when I'm not traveling. And so Japan is one of my favorite countries to visit, but the first time I visited Japan 16 years ago, I was shocked by many things in this land of the rising sun. Particularly compared to the United States of America, Japan is very, very different and very, very foreign. It's truly a foreign land with amazing vending machines, high-tech toilets, massively crowded train stations, and of course, super tiny hotel rooms. Those are just some of the things we're going to talk about in this video. And I'll say after you watch this, you'll be prepared to embrace Japan's culture and not be surprised by it, or perhaps just have a peek into a different culture if you've never been there, or even if you're not going there. And so let's go ahead and start with number one. The first thing that surprises visitors to Japan are the toilets. The toilets have a bidet function, and they typically call them washlets like this, and nearly every toilet in Japan is equipped with a washlet. That is a bidet in the toilet seat. It washes, it dries, it makes water sounds, it absorbs odor, and the seat automatically lifts on many of these when you approach it. And the first time I sat on one of these toilet seats in Japan, I thought I broke it because I sat down on it and it started to run water, and I'm like, oh my gosh, was I too fat for the toilet? But luckily I wasn't, and now when I go to Japan, I really love these toilet seats, and I love this little advertisement from Toto that says, have a little happiness in Japan with washlet. All right, let's go on to number two. The second thing that surprised first-time visitors to Japan are the taxis. And two parts about the taxis. First, taxi doors open automatically. So when you go up to a taxi in Japan, just like this, you don't open the door. In fact, if you try to open the door, it's locked, it won't open. The driver has to push a button inside to actually open the door for you. And the other thing is, taxis are really nice in Japan. The taxis have like white lace, the drivers wear white gloves, they might often wear like a shirt and a tie. I mean, it's an experience riding a taxi, but they are quite expensive. And don't expect Uber in Japan. There's no Uber because the taxi service is quite well. The Uniplex says Japan has the best airport bathrooms. It sure does. The bathrooms are super clean, and you'll also find in the airport bathrooms, you will find those Toto washlets as well. And the servant said they also play low music so others can't hear you in the toilet. That's right, to kind of disguise the noises of the toilet. They basically think of everything. Ethan asks, Chris, what are the morning times in Japan? Like morning? Like the same time here in the morning, though there is a time difference from here in Japan. Though we'll talk about train stations and traffic, and definitely the morning is not a time you want to go there. And Wu Taiwan and a few people say vending machines is a culture shock, and you know what? Vending machines, that is number three. Vending machines are everywhere in Japan, and they are amazing. But first-time visitors to Japan are surprised at just how many vending machines there are. And when I say they're everywhere, they're everywhere. This was a trip we took to see the snow monkeys in Nagano, Japan, and this is just on the side of some random mountain road. There's nothing around this for like miles, but there's this vending machine here because you might be driving by and you might be thirsty. And the vending machines have everything. They've got soda, juice, tea, they've got hot drinks, they've got cold drinks. You can even get drinks with ice dispensed from vending machines in Japan. You can get hot soup, you can get ice cream. You know, in the United States of America, vending machines, they barely work. They barely function. They barely take your money. And if they do take your money, you're lucky if they actually dispense a drink. And they certainly don't give you change. You know, there are weird things in Japanese vending machines too. like underwear, maybe even like used underwear. Anyway, this is a family-friendly live stream, so I'm not going to go into that section, but to say that in Japan, I love walking around. Just whenever I'm thirsty, I can just look around and find a vending machine. And so what am I drinking today? I'm drinking a Japanese green tea right here. I picked this up from Tokyo Central, which is a Japanese supermarket here in California. And why did I pick it up? Well, I picked it up because it has pandas on it. So I figured that was appropriate for when I live stream with all the Panda crew right back here. Let's see. Tom McCannon said Geshapon machines. Right. So these are machines, and they're like vending machines that dispense little toys. You put like a few hundred yen in it, and you get these little capsules. Brandon says you can't go wrong with Japanese vending machines. French Montana asked if it's true if you can get lobster in a vending machine. I have not seen one, but that does not. That does not preclude the fact that maybe you couldn't. Dallas Cook asks if he can buy a t-shirt. Actually, that was something I was going to announce on this live stream, but I'll go ahead and mention it now. So I've got these new t-shirt designs right here with the Yellow Productions crew, which is the name of all of these pandas, and I'll be giving one away in this live stream, and most of the live streams coming up. But if you would like to buy one, I have actually opened up a Etsy shop because there have been so many requests for the shirts. There's a link in the description of this video to my Etsy shop where if you did want to buy one of those, you can. All right. So Ethan says there's also magnets in Japanese vending machines. Like you can buy magnets in vending machines. There's a lot of things you can buy. All right. So let's go on to the next one. So this is number 4, but it's related to vending machines. Is that vending machines? Many restaurants in Japan, you order at the vending machines. These are some vending machines in front of my favorite antisocial restaurant in Japan. I have a video all about this restaurant, but it's called Ichiran Ramen. And Ichiran Ramen is set up so that you basically don't have to see anybody or interact with anybody when you eat there. And so how does this work? Well, you walk into the restaurant and you go up to these vending machines, you put your money in, you select what you want to eat from those buttons on the vending machine, and then once you've done that, you get a ticket printed out from the vending machine. You walk into the restaurant where you sit down at like a little cubicle and you put your tickets on the counter in front of you. A staff member rolls up a little bamboo shade. They take your tickets of what you ordered. They don't speak to you. They just take them, and then they come back and get your ramen, and they put it right there. So that you'll find a lot of restaurants in Japan like that. Actually, for foreigners and visitors that don't speak Japanese, this is a great way to order in restaurants in Japan because you don't have to talk to anybody. You don't have to try to do any language. You can just kind of like look at the pictures and pick one. Jenny Fed said, so glad you started an Etsy shop. Well, thank you, Jenny Fed. And there were just so many people asking for the t-shirts, and I'm clearly not doing enough live streams to give them out to enough people to win them. So, the servant says some of them have English, some of them are all in Japanese. That is very true, but the thing about them being all in Japanese is usually they have pictures, and then outside the restaurants they often have this like plastic food, which is another thing that surprises first-time visitors to Japan. It's not a separate number, but when you walk around Japan and you see restaurants, in the window they'll have all of this food, and the food's it's not real, but they're plastic models of the food they could buy. So if you happen to be in a restaurant and you can't really converse with the staff, you could always walk out to the window and point to the food that they have out there. And the servant said, the louder you slurp your ramen, the better. That shows the chef you like his food. And it cools down the ramen noodles, too. Tanner says, if I go to the Olympics if I go to Japan before the Olympics, pick up some Olympic 2020 gear. All right. We are heading to Japan before the Olympics. And so we'll try to look for that. And Kathy says she's wearing her yellow t-shirt. Thanks, Chris Lovett. Thank you, Kathy, for repping Yellow Productions. That's awesome. All right, let's go on to number 5. The 5th thing that surprises first-time visitors to Japan are convenience stores and drug stores everywhere. Not just vending machines everywhere, but also 7-Eleven, Lawson Station. There's a number of different convenience store chains in Japan, but like if you're in Tokyo, you will nearly find a convenience store on every block. And sometimes you'll see a 7-Eleven across the street from a 7-Eleven. Kind of like in New York City, how you might see a Starbucks across the street from a Starbucks. But these stores, particularly the convenience stores, they are known as konbini in Japan, and they're actually really great. Like 7-Eleven, if you go to the ones in the US and you're like, these stores are lame and I'd never buy anything from there. Well, actually, 7-Eleven is a Japanese-owned company now. It started in the US, and they are so much better in Japan. They've got like fresh food and like if you like forgot some socks or like a dress shirt, you can buy them at 7-Eleven. 7 has everything that you would actually need in Japan. Alan wants to know if I've seen cherry blossoms. Do you think it's worth it? I have seen cherry blossoms many times. After this live stream, if you search for Yellow Productions cherry blossoms, you'll see a ton of videos I've done about the cherry blossoms. And yes, I do think they are worth it in Japan. And Mr. Word wants a shout out. Word, Mr. Word. Let's see. The Uniplex says, Japan is like a perfect place. Clean streets, safe, tons of cute stuff. It sure is clean, safe, and the stuffed animals are just, they're so much cuter in Japan. They really are. Ethan wants to know, what's my favorite food in Japan? I have a lot of foods that I like in Japan, so it's hard for me to pick one favorite. But probably my favorite chain in Japan is called Pepper Lunch. They basically do like fast food steak. They give you this like cast iron sizzling skillet that has rice and beef and some butter and some corn and some pepper, and you stir it up, and it's really delicious. I also love the yakitori places in Japan where you get like the meat on the stick. Oh, and the servants mentions, so when you're buying things in the stores in Japan, to put the money in the pan, or sometimes it's a plastic tray, you put it in there, they give you your change in a separate one, so that's often how they do the money exchange instead of handing it directly. All right. So let's go on to number 6. 6 things that shock first-time visitors to Japan are the insane prices. You probably all heard about this, but it's true. These are cantaloupe melons, and the price on these cantaloupe melons is 1,990 yen. That is the equivalent of $20 per melon. And these are probably cheap melons. They're like, you can totally find watermelons for like $100. You can find bunches of grapes for $20. Is the fruit worth that much? It's tasty. I think the fruit in Japan is some of the tastiest I've had. I don't know if it's worth that much, but in Japan, you will find, like, if you like high-end stuff, you'll find some seriously high-end stuff. Chelsea wants to know if I visited the world's shortest escalator. I don't know. Where is the world's shortest escalator? Maybe I have, but I'm not sure. LJ9 asks if I've been to a Japanese baseball game. I have. I've been to see the Yokohama Bay Stars, which was truly an amazing cultural experience to see a Japanese baseball game. I recommend it to everybody, even if you don't like baseball, because I don't like baseball. Patrick wants to know, what's the cost per day in Japan? Like, it can range. They're like on the cheap end, you can spend $100 a day. On the expensive end, you can spend thousands of dollars a day. Kylie wants to know if I can recommend somewhere for snow play near Tokyo. I don't want to pay for expensive ski resorts. I just want to build a snowman. I don't know. I mean, my suggestion for closest to Tokyo would probably be like taking the bullet train to Nagano, because I think it's like 90 minutes to there or near there, and you'll find a lot of snow up in that area. So that would be my suggestion. All right. Let's go on to number 7. The 7th thing that surprised first-time visitors in Japan is excessive packaging. They love to wrap things. They love plastic. And so in convenience stores, if you want to buy a banana, you will find the bananas to be individually wrapped in plastic. When you buy something, they'll take that banana that's been wrapped in plastic and they'll put it in a plastic bag for you. If you go to the high-end department stores, they'll like wrap it and wrap it again. And I mean, there's a whole thing about wrapping and packaging. Real Fishing says, why is this so expensive in Japan versus other places like Thailand, China? Not everything in Japan is expensive, but some things are expensive. Actually, I find Japan can be a pretty inexpensive place to travel to, but the high end is really high end. Um, Danielle asked if those melons were in a Japanese versions of Whole Foods. Those melons were in just a regular, like, Japanese supermarket. You'll find them in, like, Japanese department stores. And OC Girl wants to point out that fruits are crazy expensive. They are, but plenty of other things are cheap. Hotels, Japanese food, like good hotels in Tokyo. You can get a good hotel in Tokyo for Okay, and I believe we are back. So we are now, and when Japan nightlife starts, their daytime stuff closes. There's very few 24-hour supermarkets in the big cities. If you're outside, you will find them, but there's like bars and all that stuff that's open late and the convenience stores, but not the regular stores. I just find it very strange. And when I say they close early, they also close promptly. So if a store advertises they close at 8, they really close at 8. Not 7:58, not 8:02, but 8 o'clock. And most of the supermarkets in Tokyo are in the basements of department stores. And so those generally close at 8 p.m. when the department stores close too. All right. So hopefully, I don't know what YouTube's problem is today. So I'm sorry for people who are experiencing some buffering. All right, we will go on to number 9. So speaking of stores closing really early, their ATMs close really early too. And so seriously, why does the ATM close at 7 p.m.? And when it is closed, it's really closed. Like there's often a door that'll roll down over the ATM. And ATMs often close on holidays too. I'm not kidding. I'm not making this up. So if you do need ATMs that are open all the time, visit 7-Eleven for their ATMs. 7-Elevens are typically open 24 hours a day, and 7-Eleven ATMs take most international. Okay, so being right back now talking about yen. So mostly cash-based society, this is number 10. So while Japan is getting together with digital payments, it's still significantly cash-based. Train vending machines, people ask me this question all the time. They want to buy IC cards and they want to know, can they use their credit cards to load up the IC cards. The train vending machines typically only take cash, but vending machines in Japan will take up to 10,000 yen, which is the equivalent of 100 US dollars, and they will make perfect change for you as well. So when you're going to Japan, make sure to take out some cash from the ATMs because you are going to need it. All right, going on to the next number, number 11. So number 11, something that shocks visitors is they wonder where is the dinner plate? Where is the dinner plate? Because this meal right here, this is a typical Japanese dinner at like a onsen hotel, which is like one of their traditional style hotels. There's a lot of plates. They don't really do the whole concept of like one plate with lots of food on it. They love lots of plates, lots of little plates with small portions on it. And at a lot of these restaurants, sometimes you might have more than 10 dishes per person. It is pretty insane. All right. The 12th thing that surprises first-time visitors to Japan is that there's actually more Japanese food than sushi. I feel like many people go to Japan, and including me, the first time I went, and I'm like, Japanese food is sushi. That's just what it is. But you know what? There's a lot more choices than just sushi. And there's tempura, there's katsu, gyoza, noodles, lots of different types of noodles, udon, soba, ramen. And these are just a couple examples of some katsu and some noodles. Kylie asks if I've been to the Sapporo Snow Festival and wants to know if it's worth it. Is there something closer to Tokyo? I've not been to the Sapporo Snow Festival. OC Girl has been. I think she thought it was worth it. Closer to Tokyo in Fukushima Prefecture, there's a lot of snow festivals up there because there's snow in that area as well. They get a lot of snow in the Fukushima Prefecture. Okay, going on to number 13. The 13th thing that surprises first-time visitors to Japan is that the drink sizes are tiny. That drink right there, that's a small cup. I mean, that cup, let's see. I have an In-N-Out Burger cup here for reference. This is like a regular size cup in the US. Like a regular size cup in Japan would probably be about this tall. They are way smaller. In Starbucks in Japan, they have one size smaller than they do in the US. They call it they call it a short size, which is even smaller than the US tall. And if you're at McDonald's and you order a small orange juice, I swear it is the size of a thimble. It is really small. Kathy comments about all those plates that they must really like washing dishes. Yeah, I guess they must really like washing dishes. And OC Girl also says there are a lot of snow festivals in Japan. There sure are. If you were just to like Google snow festivals in Japan, snow festivals near Tokyo, I think you will find a ton of them. Okay. Going on to number 15. 14! Let me not go too fast. This is number 14. Plastic chopsticks. Surprise first-time visitors to Japan. Those chopsticks that I'm holding right there that are black, they are made of plastic. And plastic chopsticks are really quite slippery. Most chopsticks, like in the US, are often wooden chopsticks, but they, I think, are, I don't know, I want to say maybe more of the aware of the environment, so the plastic chopsticks are reusable, but particularly for like wet foods, you know, I feel like the real joke is like wet peanuts picking up with those plastic chopsticks. They are really, really hard to do. The 15th thing that surprised visitors to Japan is that drinking is a national sport. Even more so in Japan than in the USA. And so if you take the last train in Japan, which is usually around like midnight or 1 a.m., that is often considered to be the drunk train. And that's why they have capsule hotels, because they have a last train, people drink too much, and they miss the train, and so they can go into a capsule hotel, which is basically just like, almost like the size of a coffin that they can put themselves in just to sleep from 1 a.m. maybe to 5 or 6 a.m. until the first trains start running again. Jane asks, what's my favorite hotel in Shinjuku? It is the Hotel Century Southern Tower. I have a video review on it if you want to check it out. You can just search for Hotel Century Southern Tower, Yellow Productions. Laura says she likes bringing her own chopsticks. That's another way to be environmentally conscious. What kind of chopsticks do you bring, Laura? Do you bring metal ones or do you bring plastic ones? And OC Girl comments that the snow festivals in Japan, they're usually around the same time, so you can go to a different one every day in a nearby town, obviously because it snows in the same time, so it's really cold in places at about the same time. All right, let's go on to number 16. Something that often surprises first-time visitors to Japan is that there's no tipping. No tipping in Japan. I don't mean cow tipping, I mean tipping in stores. In Japan, tipping is often considered rude. In the US, tipping is a daily thing that Americans do multiple times a day. In the US, we tip the waiters, cab drivers, busboys, bartenders, and it seems like everybody gets a tip here. But if you tip somebody in Japan, they might be confused about why you gave them extra money, and likely they'll be handing it back. So I say this is surprising, but I say nobody hates this. People generally like this. And I like it too, because I think when you don't have to worry about tipping, I think the atmosphere is more relaxed. The waiters don't have to come over every 3 minutes to make you think that you care about them so that they deserve a tip. Everybody wins. Don't tip in Japan. All right. The 17th thing that surprised visitors to Japan is that smoking is totally a thing in Japan. In the USA, it's hard to find a place to smoke. Restaurants, bars are typically no smoking. In Japan, you'll still find cigarette vending machines all over the place. Many restaurants and bars have smoking areas. You will find hotels have smoking rooms. If you don't like smoking rooms, make sure when you're booking a hotel that you book a non-smoking room. Acer asks if women drink as much as men. I think the men drink more, but there's often a lot of after-work partying that goes on, and so in the after-work partying, the women are drinking a lot. It's not like a made-up picture. This is actually a real picture from a train in Japan. And actually, I went on a trip to Japan with my mom on one of the previous trips, and somebody was so tired they were actually like, they literally fell asleep on her shoulder. And it was then some Japanese guy from the other side that woke up that one and be like, hey, you're sleeping on this other lady's shoulder. But people just sleep everywhere in Japan. Okay, the 19th thing, surprises first-time visitors to Japan, is that hotel rooms are tiny. They're super tiny. This is a typical Japanese business hotel. And there's a chain that I often recommend called Toyoko Inn, but these rooms, there's like no space to open your luggage. You often need to open it on the bed. Oh, and in Japanese hotels, they love their paperwork. When you check in, expect to take at least 5 minutes with lots of explanation, and don't expect to skip it because they like their paperwork. They're gonna like stamp things, they're gonna sign things. But if you need a lot of space and you're booking hotels, don't book the cheapest hotel. Take a look at some extra bigger ones. OC Girl and I generally look, and the cheapest ones are usually a little too small for us. This is a little too small for me because I'm kind of a big guy. And Japanese hotel websites will almost always tell you the size of the room, so like 14 meters squared, 17 meters squared. I feel like to get to the level of a typical American hotel room, it's about 24 or 25 meters squared. Kirk wants to know who would win between ninja and samurai. I think the ninjas would win because I think the ninjas are sneaky. That's what I think. Dale asks if you still tip Uber drivers and taxi drivers. No, you don't tip anybody in Japan, and there's no Uber in Japan. Okay, so Arvin asks, you want to go in the pool, then you need a swim cap. And most Japanese hotels will have swim caps that they can loan you if you don't have your own, and they'll typically also give you goggles as well. The 22nd thing that surprised first-time visitors to Japan are toilet shoes or toilet slippers. In traditional Japanese-style hotels, you will find slippers like this when you go into the toilet room. And by the way, if you're visiting like a Japanese house, definitely take off your shoes because Japanese people take off their shoes before they go into their house. And then if you're in a bathroom someplace, then and you see slippers like that, they might not necessarily say toilet, but if you see slippers right before you go in the bathroom, well, you can be sure that those are toilet slippers. All right. The 23rd thing that surprised people going to Japan are toilets still have squat toilets, and some people have never seen toilets like this, and it's kind of like the opposite of the toilets I talked about earlier, right? I talked about the Toto washlets that are like amazing and futuristic and play music and sound and wash you, and this is the opposite of that. Most Japanese bathrooms, if they have this, they'll also have regular Western toilets, so you can generally look on the outside of the stalls for the sign that says what type of toilet it is. And also, typical Japanese public restrooms do not have any hand towels. In Japan, they generally expect you to bring a handkerchief with you wherever you go, or the Japanese people bring a handkerchief with them wherever they go to wipe their hands in. So if you're going to be out and about for the day, I might recommend, your hotel grabbing some paper towels or grabbing like a hand towel so that you have something to wash your hands in public restrooms. Dale says the toilet shoes are reusable. Yeah, generally the toilet, like in your hotel, I mean, they'll clean them and give new ones before the other guests. In a place of business, yeah, those toilet shoes, everybody might put them on. They don't throw them away. And the Uniplex says, we Canadians remove shoes before going into someone's house. I think it's a good practice. OC Girl and I, we remove our shoes too. It keeps our carpets clean. And again, we also have white carpets. So the only way to keep white carpets clean is not to have your shoes on them. All right. So now the 24th thing that surprised first-time visitors to Japan is Crowded train stations. I'm sure you've heard of this one. Train stations in Japan really are crowded. This is a platform, people waiting for the train. And yes, they do push you on the train. Not everywhere, not all the time, but if you're in Tokyo at some of the really busy times, there are people who will be there to push you on the train because that's the only way you can get on the train because it's so full. So if you're traveling around rush hour, which is like 7 to 9 a.m. in the morning or 5 to 7 p.m. at night, prepare to have no personal space. And by the way, there's also this whole train etiquette when you're on the train in Japan. You don't talk on the train, don't put your butt in people's faces. If you want to know more about riding the train, I've got 2 videos on that, one about how to ride the trains in Tokyo, and another one about how to ride the trains in Osaka. Kathy says no buffering for a while now. Hopefully it's fixed. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. Thank you, Kathy. I picked a different lower resolution in my streaming software. So apparently the intertubes were clogged earlier, I guess. All right, let's go on to number 25, face masks. Face masks surprise first-time visitor to Japan. If you walk around Japan, you'll see people wearing face masks all the time. Everybody, maybe not everybody, 50% of people, something like that, business people, non-business people. It's not generally because they're sick, it's because they don't want to get sick from you or they don't want to get sick from other people. In Japan, they don't typically have the notion of sick days. In Japan, like if you're sick, you're expected to come to work. And so since that's the case and that's the culture, then that means there are sick people at work. And so if there are sick people at work, the only way you don't get sick is by wearing a mask. And same thing on the subways. David DS, if there's pickpocketing on the trains, generally no. Japan is considered like a super safe country. The crime rate is near zero. I have a slight story on that I had a coworker. She went to Japan and she forgot her laptop on the train. It was like in a laptop bag. She left it on the train. She got off the train in Tokyo and was freaked out because she forgot her laptop on it. So she went to the station attendant, all freaking out that she forgot her laptop. She wanted to know if they could like call somebody to get her laptop on the train. And the station manager was like, nah. What are you worried about? Don't worry about it. What train were you on? Was it the train 3 minutes ago? Okay, well that train comes back here in 2 hours. When it comes back here, just go on it and get your laptop. And she's like, what are you talking about? But sure enough, 2 hours later, when that train came back to the train station, she walked on it and her laptop was sitting right where she left it. You could not say that about most cities in the U.S. or any city in the U.S. If you left a laptop on the train, it would be gone just like that. Let's see. Laced Bacon says, yeah, we call out in the U.S. even when we're not sick. Yeah, that's true, right? That's, sometimes we might have a mental health day. We can't go to work. Joining Jojo says, face masks are sold out around here in the Bay Area. Yes! Obviously the whole coronavirus thing, right? Nate and Ness says, I've heard it's rude to blow your nose in Japan. It is considered rude to blow your nose in public in Japan. So if you need to blow your nose, go to the bathroom. I mean, if you're a foreigner, they sort of exempt you from some Japanese etiquette things. Matt wants to know, how child-friendly is Tokyo? My wife and I are planning to go with our daughter when she will be 4 to 5 years old. I've heard mixed reports on this. I think it's like Tokyo, like restaurants and things like that are not particularly friendly to strollers. I don't think they have anything against kids, but if you have strollers or you're expecting a high seat or a high chair, those might be difficult in most restaurants in Japan. I've heard that from other people. Obviously, we just have our own little one right now, so we haven't done a lot of traveling with her, so it's hard for me to say from personal experience. The 26th thing that surprised first-time visitors to Japan is that everybody is always dressed up, like all the time. Men in business suits, women in high heels, all hours of the day. You're like, how long do these people work that you see people in business suits at still 10 o'clock at night or on Saturdays or on Sundays? And the answer is they work a lot and they're expected to wear the typical uniform. If they don't, like, Japan's really big on uniforms. The people who work at 7-Eleven will have a uniform, Disneyland a uniform, but your business attire is also this uniform right here. And so, of course, I'm always the underdressed guy because, I'm always wearing my yellow shirts. Christina says you have an awesome channel, Chris. We use some of your Singapore and Washington, D.C. tips, and they are very helpful. Thank you, Christina. I appreciate it. All right. The 27th thing that surprised people when they go to Japan is that everything is on time. The trains, the planes, the automobiles, it's on time. Like, if you're riding a train that is scheduled at 2 o'clock and a train arrives on the platform at 1:57, that is likely not your train. That is likely a different train. Conversely, if you think you are going to get to a dinner reservation that you had at 6 and you think you're going to get there late at 6:15, they likely decide you're not showing up and they gave that to somebody else. Also, if you think you're getting to a hotel with a check-in time of 3 p.m. and that you're going to check in at 2:50, they are likely going to make you wait 10 minutes for that 3 o'clock check-in time. I can speak to that from personal experience. Christina says, I've heard if you're eating noodles at a restaurant, you have to slurp if you enjoy it. Strange if they are polite people. You do not have to slurp to enjoy it. I think most people slurp just to cool the noodles down. But that's one of those where, because everybody slurps, they don't consider slurping rude. Yeah, so OC Girl says, being dressed up, that it's not just work hours, but women in Japan will put on makeup just to go to 7-Eleven, just to go to the convenience store, just to go to supermarkets, because it's considered often rude for women not to put on makeup when they go outside. Nate wants to know, what's the cheapest way to fly to Japan? Is there a particular airline that's preferable from the U.S.? It depends where you're going from. Usually flights to Osaka are some of the cheapest because not as many people fly to Osaka. I find the flights from LAX to Narita, Tokyo are pretty cheap. Like often $600 or $700 round trip from the West Coast to Tokyo. It's one of the reasons why we go to Japan a lot. Is the flights are less expensive to Japan from the US than they are to Europe. Freddie wants to know, how's the Shinjuku area? We'll be there in April. Shinjuku is our favorite place to stay in Tokyo, so I will say it's good. Okay. All right. Number 28. The 28th thing that surprised first-time visitors to Japan is there are very few public trash cans. You're expected to carry your trash with you when you're out and about and bring it back to your home, bring it back to your place of business, bring it back to your hotel. If you are looking for trash cans in Japan, you will generally find trash cans at convenience stores, 7-Eleven, Lawson Station. You'll also find trash cans usually like in department stores, like department store bathrooms. You'll also find them on like the more high-end trains, like the Bullet Train, the Shinkansen. So I would say if you have trash, don't expect to just be able to throw it away anywhere. Many Japanese people will carry a plastic bag with them so that as they generate trash throughout the day, they can put it in that plastic bag that's in their backpack and then throw it away when they get to a trash can. Okay. Kathy says, I don't really wear makeup. Do I have to when I go next January? I don't think you have to, Kathy. As I said, there's a lot of these etiquette things that kind of apply to Japanese people that I don't think they would find it rude as a visitor if you if you didn't have makeup. And Laura says, Kathy, they're not the boss of you. So, all right. Golden wants to know, how many times am I going to Vegas? Going in the future? I don't know. I've been to Vegas at least 30 times in the past. Misty wants to know if sumo wrestling tickets are easy to get. We've never been to see sumo in Tokyo. We have seen sumo in Los Angeles, which was really neat. And so I'd recommend you try to go. I don't know. I've never bought tickets there. If you can't get in, there's also like a sumo wrestling museum, which would like be another option to go to just to see some sumo culture stuff. And Andrew says, yeah, recycling in Japan is on a whole different level than the USA. All right, he's right. Okay, so actually, I will use this bottle as an example of recycling in Japan. So in Japan, they might not, so like in the US, we'll have like a trash can and a recycle bin. And if you go to Whole Foods, there might be like 4 bins. But in Japan, you could have like 6 bins. So if you were throwing this bottle away in Japan, you would not just put the lid on it and throw it away. You would take the lid and put it in a special place just for the lids. And then almost all bottles in Japan, if you see this right here, this is like a quick removal thing. Almost all bottles in Japan have this perforated thing so that you can remove the label on it, which I'm sad I'm removing this Panda label, so that you can remove the label from it. You throw the label away separately, and then you throw the empty bottle in its own place just for bottles, separate from the wrapper and separate from the lid. So yeah, it is definitely a whole different level. Okay. Now, let's see. Number 29, the 29th thing that surprised visitors to Japan is that people will use purses to save seats. So, for example, this is like, say, like a Japanese food court. If I wanted to save my seat there, I could totally take my bag with my Louis Vuitton purse. Not that I have, maybe my Louis Vuitton my Louis Vuitton man purse, and just put it on the table and walk away and go order some food and come back, and my Louis Vuitton man purse would still be there. If I did that in the US, it would be gone the moment I turned my back. If I was in London, I could literally still have it in an eye shot and it could disappear. People sorry, Mr. Pink has to, Mr. Pink has to just go away. That's what has to happen to Mr. Pink. All right. Yeah, and the people will save things for a long time, like T-shirts, this and that, and people like respect that. Stephen Green says food courts even have employees who check the trash recycling to make sure it's stored correctly. Yeah, they have to, because there's probably foreigners like us who don't understand and just toss it in there. Kathy says you could not do that in Australia. I believe you couldn't. You can't do that in many places. Freddie wants to know if I recommend Mount Fuji, and if so, for how long. I recommend this region called Hakone, which is like a resort area at the base of Mount Fuji. I would say spend 1 or 2 nights there. Kind of like a classic thing, your first time in Japan. Fly into Tokyo, spend a few days in Tokyo, take the bullet train to Hakone, spend a couple nights in Hakone, take the bullet train to Kyoto, spend a couple nights in Kyoto, then go on to Osaka, a couple nights in Osaka, and then fly home from Osaka. Golden State wants to know if I can say anything on Kobe Bryant. It's just very sad what happened to Mr. Bryant. All right. The number 30. The 30 thing that surprised first-time visitors to Japan are little kids walking to school by themselves. And obviously this is a group of kids together, but if you're like around Japan in the morning where kids are walking to school, like little elementary school kids, like first graders and kindergartners will be walking to school by themselves. Not like even in groups, just by themselves. They'll be taking the train by themselves. They'll be riding the bus by themselves. Because Japan is such a safe place, they can totally do that, and they teach the kids to do that at a very early age. Though they generally all wear like colorful hats that identify the school they are from. And they're also really big on their school uniforms. You'll see school kids in school uniforms all the time and everywhere. The 31st thing that surprised first-time visitors to Japan are French maids on the street. Particularly in Tokyo, in the neighborhood of Akihabara, there are a ton of these maid cafes where you go in and the waitresses are dressed up as French maids, and they sing songs to you, and they call you master. We have yet to go to a maid cafe because they generally don't allow filming in them, and so we generally go to places that people are videotaping. And in order to get people in the maid cafes, these girls will be outside dressed in these French outfits, handing out flyers to tell you where their maid cafes are. Laura says she likes the idea of the Moomin cafes, where you can drink coffee and sit with a cuddly Moomin if you're done. Ah, that's a cool idea. Ilmatic, welcome to the live stream. Said he finally caught one of these. That's cool. All right. The 32nd thing that surprised first-time visitors to Japan. These got mixed up. All right. The 32nd thing that surprised visitors to Japan is how helpful the Japanese are to foreign tourists. I think sometimes the Japanese have a reputation of not being friendly or not being helpful, but like it couldn't be further from the truth. So a couple stories I want to share about Japanese being super helpful. OC Girl and I, we were in Sendai, which is a city to the north of Tokyo, and we were exploring. We might have been lost off the beaten path. We had no idea where the train station was. This was before the world of smartphones and Google Maps. And so we were wandering around for 30 minutes trying to find a train station, probably just getting further away from it. So we asked the Japanese lady in our poorest Japanese where the nearest eki was, train station, eki. And she said she would take us to the train station, which she was walking in this direction when we stopped her. And then when she said she would take us to the train station, she turned around to walk us 15 minutes this way to the train station to make sure we got there, and then she started to go back to where she was going. I mean, you would never find somebody in the US who would go 30 minutes out of their way to take you to the nearest train or subway station. Super amazing. One time I was stuck on a train coming into Shinjuku Station from the Mount Fuji area. Something was wrong. The train wasn't moving. We were just stopped there, like in the middle of a street. And after like 5 minutes, there was some lady on the side on like a platform of the station that wrote on a big piece of paper with marker to tell me that there was like the train was broken or the train was stopped ahead. Like in English, like she was standing on the platform. She didn't work there. She just looked in the train, saw somebody who didn't look Japanese and looked confused and wrote me a note to try to help me out. And then the final story I have about helpfulness is one of the trips I went with my mom to Japan. She had really bad air sickness arriving into Tokyo, and the Japan airline staff we were flying with, they were like beyond amazing. From bringing a wheelchair to escorting her to customs, to taking her to the airport clinic, to waiting with us in the airport clinic, to calling the hotel we were staying at to tell them that she wasn't feeling well, to get them to waive the cancellation fee, to booking us a new hotel that was next to the airport to sleep the first night, to even getting us in a taxi and telling the taxi where to take us for that hotel. And then when we got back to the airport like a week later to leave, they had a note on the reservation to ask her how she was feeling. I mean, it's like Japanese people are super helpful. And so if you were in Japan and you're lost and you can't find something, just ask somebody, they will help you. Tanner wants to know, what are the best desserts to recommend to try in Japan? I really love their soft serve ice cream. It's really good. There's a lot of different ones. Pudding, the pudding's really delicious. They do these like matcha things and parfaits and desserts. The Japanese also have kind of like a really neat take on French cakes. So if you're in like a Japanese department store and you see some place that sells like French looking pastries, definitely give those a try. The Uniplex says Japan also has a network of free tour guides. That's cool. Is there like a name for that people should look for, Uniplex? We've never done their live tour guides. Hey, thanks, Danielle, for enjoying the live stream and sticking through all the buffering issues earlier. Roxa says, I've been to Japan a few times, and one time a lady walked my daughter and I to Shinjuku Station down to platform 14. Yeah, it's, I mean, it's super amazing how helpful they will be. All right, so now, number 33. This is the last number, but I want to let you know that after this number, for those of you that are on the live stream, I got a couple special things that I'm going to talk about. So I'm actually going to go into like 10 minutes bonus time on this live stream. If you are not on the live stream, this video is going to end after I talk about this number. So just special content for the live stream after this number. All right, so number 33 is Japanglish. Something that surprises first-time visitors when they go to Japan is there's a lot of Japanese words that sound like English words, and Japanese people will be speaking to you like they're speaking English, and they think they're speaking English because these words are English-based words, but they're not words, and so then nobody understands each other. And an example of that is McDonald's is pronounced Makudonorudo. And so, right, to them, that's an English word, and that's how it's pronounced. But they say that to English speakers, and we're like, I don't know what you're talking about. But the Japanglish actually, like, it kind of gets fun, because you see T-shirts that say certain things. You're like, that doesn't